So what I'd like to do in these introductory remarks is to say something first and foremost about what this field exactly entails, what governance studies are, second, about why it is such an important and crucial area of research in the social sciences, and third, about the contribution AISSR researchers are making to this field. Okay, so first question, what is the field of governance? What does this somewhat mysterious term exactly mean? The concept of governance stems from the Greek kybernon, meaning to pilot, steer, or direct, which was translated into Latin as gubernare, which is in turn the root for modern concepts of government and governance. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a political theorist, and we like to throw in Greek terms whenever we can. So governance means something like the study of the art of governing, or more broadly put, the study of how collective decisions are made. It would be hard to exaggerate the importance of this subject to the social sciences, or indeed to humanity at large. Without the human capacity to devise new institutions for collective decision-making, we would still be living in small bands of hunter-gatherers. Forget about the invention of agriculture. It's the invention of government, of institutions for large-scale collective decision-making that has made human civilization possible, for better or worse, as James Scott has recently reminded us in his brilliant book, Against the Grain. The way in which we make collective decisions continues to be incredibly important today. Across the world, a wide variety in norms and institutions for making collective decisions can be observed. It is now generally accepted that these institutional differences play a crucial role in explaining differences in social outcomes. For instance, most economists now agree that the quality of a nation's political institutions, rather than simply the existence or absence of free markets, is an enormously important determinant for economic prosperity or the lack thereof. Considering the crucial importance of this subject, it is hardly surprising that the study of the art of governing, of collective decision-making, has held a central place in the social sciences since their emergence in the 19th century. But it is important to emphasize that this particular field was originally labeled the study of government rather than governance. When the very first departments of political science were created in the 19th century, these routinely appointed professors of government. There simply was no such thing as a professor of governance. Since the 1990s, however, the study of collective decision-making has been refashioned as a study of governance. To give you some idea of how quickly this new approach emerged, in the 1980s, only 349 papers were classified as dealing with the topic, and these papers were cited altogether 3,609 times. In the 1990s, the number of papers and the number of citations both grew more than 10 times, resulting in 3,773 papers and over 70,000 citations. The first decade of the second millennium saw a further acceleration in scholarly interest in governance. The number of papers on the topic grew to over 18,000 and they drew over 100,000 citations. So in less than 30 years, scholarly output on the topic of governance increased by a factor of 50. Why did this shift happen? Why did people start talking about the study of governance rather than government? In answer to that question, it is important to emphasize that governance studies is not just government studies under another name. The emergence of this new concept should not just be seen as an attempt to rebrand an existing field of study. Instead, the switch from government to governance signaled a real and significant shift in perspective. Perhaps the most important attribute of governance approaches is that they can be applied in a wide range of settings. While we typically associate the term government with the nation-state, a student of governance might be interested in collective decision-making on the level of the city, as is Maria Kaika, on the level of non-state actors, as is Lawrence Bakker, or on the supranational level of the EU, as Jonathan Seidlin's work illustrates. In short, the turn from the study of government to the study of governance has allowed a remarkable broadening of the field of investigation of researchers working on collective decision-making. The rise of this new approach to the study of collective decision-making must be understood as a response to three major social and intellectual developments. First, the rise of neoliberalism. Second, the increasing trend toward globalization. And third, the turn towards interdisciplinarity in the social sciences. First and foremost, in the wake of the rise of neoliberalism, many states, especially in the developed world, have abandoned or at least substantially modified traditional ways of collective decision-making. Hierarchical, bureaucratic ways of decision-making have been in retreat, and instead neoliberal states have come to employ various other modes of policy-making, such as citizen initiatives. Another way of putting this is to say that national states now engage a lot more in governance than in governing. Second, and even more importantly, the growing mobility of people, goods and ideas across borders has decreased the importance of the nation-state as the prime level of decision-making. An ever larger number of decisions are now made on levels both below and above the nation-state, thus stimulating the importance of types of institutions and actors that do not fit into the category of government. Third, under the influence of the push for interdisciplinarity, the traditional division of labor between the social sciences is breaking down. It is now becoming increasingly clear that urban planners or anthropologists have developed insights about collective decision-making that are relevant to political scientists and vice versa. Governance is a concept that allows people from these different disciplinary backgrounds to talk to each other. And that is not just theoretical wishful thinking. Unlike the field of government, which was traditionally dominated by political scientists, researchers from a wide variety of disciplines have contributed to the study of governance. An analysis of nearly 10,000 papers on the topic of governance that were published between 2006 and 2009, for instance, reveals that they came from economic and management journals, political science, geography, urban studies, sociology, and over 50 other fields. So to reiterate, governance studies is a new and exciting approach to the study of collective decision-making that arose in response to new social and intellectual developments, including the transformation of the neoliberal state, globalization, and a trend toward interdisciplinarity. That brings me to my third and final topic, the contribution of AISSR researchers to this new field. Now, I won't go into detail about the 5 researchers whose work is being showcased today, since I don't want to steal their thunder. But I will mention that they have all made major contributions to our understanding of how governance, how collective decision-making works in very different contexts, and how it is changing in response to new challenges such as globalization. At the same time, I would like to emphasize that the work being presented today is really only the tip of the iceberg. The study of governance is very much at the heart of what many of us do here at AISSR. To mention just a few examples, my colleague Marlies Vlasius is currently conducting a large research project in which she investigates how authoritarian states like China and Russia continue to survive and thrive in spite of increasing global prosperity and interconnectedness. On the other hand, Justus Uitermark from the Sociology Department is investigating the regulation of housing markets in Amsterdam and Rotterdam. He wants to find out which policies are most successful in the fight against urban segregation, especially in light of the increasing embrace of housing market liberalization in these 2 cities. So again, these lines of inquiry might at first sight seem to be completely different. But in fact, both Marlies and Justus are engaged in the study of governance. They want to know how collective decisions are made and how ways of doing so are changing under all sorts of new societal pressures and challenges. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that AISSR researchers are also making a hugely important contribution to the study of normative aspects of governance. Gaining a better understanding of how governance works, after all, is only half of the work. Our job as social scientists, I would argue, is not just to investigate, but also to evaluate. Social scientists, for instance, have spent a great deal of energy showing how globalization has diverted power away from the national level to transnational and subnational levels. But what does that mean for the legitimacy of our political institutions? Supranational institutions like the EU, for instance, famously lack robust mechanisms for democratic accountability. Does not that make them irredeemably illegitimate from a normative perspective, as indeed an increasing number of political actors are claiming? These and similar questions are addressed by my colleague Enzo Rossi, who is currently working on a large research project in which he develops a wholly new account of legitimacy, as being based not on citizens' consent, but on the responsiveness of institutions to stakeholder values. Okay, this is where I will conclude. I would now like to turn over the floor to my esteemed colleagues Dennis Arnold, Lawrence Becker, Maya Kaika, Mooney Kramer, and Jonathan Seitlin, or at least to their digital images.